July like day. So, so no roll call since we don't have anyone on remote, or do we still need to?
We still need to do, that. Okay,
Okay.
gotcha.
So-
No, but all the votes we can do by yay or nay.
Okay, great. All right, so let's do roll call. Paul, you want to
Paul
start?
Ash, Blake Over, Chris Cochran,
Holly Warren, Kate Rosenbarger, Cheryl Gilliland, Controller's Office.
Dee Del Rosa, Executive Director.
Heather Robinson,
Pauline Noodles, legal.
and our guest joining us today, if you don't mind stating your name, Cirilla.
Oh, sorry,
That's okay.
Cyrilla Helm with the Foundation for Monroe County Schools.
Thank you.
and I'm Glenn Hopkins with Monroe County Schools.
All right, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here today. No minutes for us today, Dee?
No, not, we will have double minutes next month.
Okay, all right. You've been a little busy with budget.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. Okay, so moving on, I think with MCCSC Foundation joining us, we're gonna flip the agenda a little bit and allow our guests to go first with their presentation if you are ready. So
We are.
all right. Welcome.
Join us at the
Wherever you're comfortable, if you want to,
pull up.
Yeah, pull
We can
up
go
or-
I don't know if that impacts it if we go there.
Oh, no, you'll be fine.
yeah,
Are we okay with that?
yeah, join us here, please.
I'll pull Glenn up to the front. First time here.
And we also have some information in our packet, so what you have sent over, so.
Yeah, we have in your packet, yeah, you should have the full proposal from SCCSC.
Yeah, so just to double introduce Glenn to you guys. So normally it is our curriculum directors. You might imagine after yesterday, they're a little swamped today. So Glenn is principal at University Elementary, and so he takes on a lot of this when they're not able to join us. So happy to have him, and he'll be able to answer any detailed questions you guys have about what they're asking for. We'll start with the evaluation. We always do this for you just to kind of give you an idea, or not an idea, to let you know how the money was spent last year, confirm to you that it was spent. And I see a lot of new faces in here. So I guess you guys know this, and it would be, because I'm not seeing the old faces that normally, last year we wrote our grant. We've been doing this for, oh Lord, since Doris Sims was here. So that'll date some of us, okay? Me included. So we're very grateful for this grant. It does really make a difference in the educational opportunities for the students that are that reside in the urban enterprise zone. The most of them do filter into the schools that are represented here. We actually did a transportation run this year, a transportation report this year to actually really see where they are with school choice. These kids can land anywhere. I think Glenn has maybe 14 or 15. You might not even know that they reside in that zone, but they do. So they're spread throughout it, but the concentrations still heavily remain at Templeton, Fairview, Summit, and then they pass up through Tri-North generally. So there's a few that will pass in through Bachelor sometimes, but we felt that we would still keep the ask here. And then of course they also filter into the high schools. So we're keeping the ask there. The evaluation last year, you guys were so generous and you doubled your money to us. And it came at a time that was really pretty critical for the corporation. They were in the middle of implementing the science of reading that was passed through legislation. So a tremendous amount of money went into Haggerty resources. Glenn can speak to all of those a lot better than I can, but it was curriculum for staff, decodable books in order to just bring staff up to what's being mandated in legislation in order to get literacy numbers up throughout the state. So if you guys, I don't know if anybody has any direct questions. We don't usually we don't go through that whole evaluation unless you want me to go through it line item by line item, but intentionally to help you with your time. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer those. So we did break it. So for those of you who are new, the bottom of it showed the increase that they gave us in funding. So, so that's how that money was used. Okay. All right. If no questions, then we'll just go into this year's ask. We do have it broken in a text form for you, but I'm going to just pretty much take us to what's on my last page. There was a summary page that looks like this, which is really easier to follow. It's kind of an Excel file. It's just gonna break you down by school, to see that. And so Fairview is holding, there's 158 students at Fairview, so that makes up 42% of their enrollment. And their request is not dramatically different from what you see from year to year. For those of you who have been on the board, VMath is a math product that gives just extra resources to build those foundational skills. RAS Kids is an extra resource on the literacy side. Their big thing is they're adding these math intervention kits. Blaine can probably speak to the math issues with these kids
Sure.
since COVID.
So we see, it's interesting because you've got this group of kids and we're really tracking this cohort group, I guess you could say, of kids coming through based on some COVID stuff. So when you look at our current sixth graders, or sorry, our current second graders, for example, this is really our first group of kids that have been back in school full time since COVID. So you look at our current pocket right now, 3rd through 6th at the elementary level. Those are the kids that have either, left at spring break that first year, or they stayed at home online for an entire year, or they did that transition year back where we were doing hybrid learning online / being in the classroom. So there's a lot of that. This is really our transition group. And so if you were to look at not only our scores in MCCSC in these schools, but also across the state, you see just this drop off. And that's shared in here. Like, for example, Summit shared some of their data that when you look at their math scores, they've seen a steady decrease over the last 3 years of their math scores. And so what we've been doing in these schools, and all of our schools, but in these schools in particular, looking at some different interventions we can put in place. So when we look at this math intervention kit, it's a simple kit. And lots of kits are used throughout the day by teachers, but it's a kit, it's pre-made by a publishing company, and it's got some lessons in there that not only the classroom teachers can use, but our instructional coaches can use, our Title I teachers can use, preventionists, and it's ready to grab lessons that are very specific to skills that these students are needing. And those skills are identified based on some assessments that we give, state assessments like NWEA, iLearn testing, DIBELS, those kinds of things are informing our teachers of the skills that students need, and then they can jump into some of these resources like this literacy kit that they can use to start building up supportive skills.
So the ask is not dramatically different between the 3 schools. You might see a little bit of terminology difference, but you're starting to see the repeats. RAS Kids, all 3 schools, extra literacy, extra time. That's an E, they access that through their iPads. One of the really good things with that is they can take it home. So if they're in a home that does not have reading materials available to them, they have it. The key resource to that is that it is on their grade level. I believe the teachers, RAS Kids, I believe the teachers pretty much set them so that they're not grabbing books that are way out of their range. So they're setting that up.
RAS Kids is great because it reads the story to them, so they can front load it with reading to them. They can then read it independently, and there's various levels of reading, but there's hundreds of thousands of books on there, and they're always updating with new books to keep these kids interested. And it's nonfiction and fiction as well, which is hitting all those expectations, not only that we have for our students to learn to read, but also for students that have different interests along the way.
Yeah. So you're seeing the VMath. VMath is in a pilot stage. The corporation hasn't been using VMath for a lot, but your funding last year allowed them to put VMath in these schools. So it's an expensive program. It's a very expensive program. The one at Summit, you're gonna look at that number of almost 14,000 and go, whoa. Keep in mind, there's almost 600 kids at Summit. Summit is the largest elementary school. And so out of that grouping, just from an equity standpoint at them, even though there's about 128 DUEA kids, when you put a program in like that equitably, you have to make sure that the full grade level has it. So that's the drive. Those are big class loads for them. They're you know the numbers on their grade levels off the top of your head?
Well, 600 divided by 7
Yeah.
classes, so like they're up in the 90s per class.
90 per grade level, yeah.
100 kids per grade level.
And VMath doesn't catch a break on anything, so there's no volume discount. No, it is by the drink, so they pay by the number of students, so that's why you're seeing that one be significantly more than what you're seeing at Fairview. So those are pretty much the elementary asks. Templeton has a unique one in there that the others didn't ask for. It's a makerspace cart. A lot of the schools are really going after trying to, interject, science and technology with their students in different touch points throughout the day. So you're starting to see them added into their library times. You're seeing them added in at different spaces. It just gives them a different way of learning. So they might be doing something with a technology activity, but they can pick up a nonfiction book that goes along with it, so they combine literacy into it. So there's a lot of that happening with this kind of thing. A lot of you are familiar with what you would hear, a dual credit course. Think of it that way. It's dual curriculum course, it's happening across it so that they're hitting multiple things.
These carts are really nice because they're like a rolly cart. So it can go from classroom to classroom, and it has everything that you need on it to engage in a STEM activity. And so it might be like, there might be this little board at the top of it, but you can put this prompt at the top, like build a kite. Maybe you're working on some engineering process things, and you say build a kite, but then you have all these materials built into the cart that students are now using to build this kite, or they need to build, whatever, some kind of dam or something to solve an erosion problem that's going on. And Templeton, being an international baccalaureate school, they're always looking at how can we take action to make a positive impact in the world. And so Templeton would integrate this into what they're doing in their IB units already. There's 6 units throughout the year that they're working on. And they would take that and integrate that into their science and their literature and their math programming during the day. And it being on a cart will allow all teachers to have access to it versus something getting clogged up in a room or collecting dust in a room. It'll be very mobile and accessible for all teachers.
Any questions on the elementary request? Tri-North, theirs is a little bit different. Their PBIS, that's the whole acronym went out of my brain.
Positive behavior intervention system.
Yes, positive behavior intervention system. So they have a lot of new staff. So part of their funding is training to get them all on the same language, using the same styles of problem intervention. The whole goal is less referrals to the office, keeping them in the classroom. That's sort of mixed in with their amalgamy rooms for kids who have those types of learning incentives there. So a big portion of this one was training, but it's also just little incentives that they use with the kids to encourage positive behavior. So those are the types of things happening there. Couple people have looked at the escape rooms and go, what in the world is escape rooms? This, from what I've been told, is a little bit novel to Tri-North. Their librarian created this a couple of years ago with some different problem skill solving. So it's based on a problem. And how you can think about it. If you go to an escape room, how to get yourself out? Well, they're not trying to get themselves out. They just use that term. So it's all problem based, but it's very interactive. They hide things throughout the building that they have to look for and find. And from what I've been told, it's extremely, extremely popular with that age demographic. So, so that's what it is. It's to build some new ones because they've been using the same ones for a little bit. So it's to build some new ones.
I think something that's exciting about this one is that it is not just for your high ability kids, right? The ones that are going to be traditionally your critical thinkers for things. This is built specifically with inclusion kids in mind. And so we're including all populations in this. It's going to be built in collaboration with those students. So it's not just something that's going to be here on a piece of paper, go make it happen. The kids are going to be coming together to build this program and then go make it happen. So there's a lot of critical skills, some problem solving, some collaborations happening. That's really exciting. That gives those kids that ownership in the process.
The escape room, did the librarian, she created the whole thing, or was it
From my understanding, she created it, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, these programs, how do you guys decide what's the process of determining these particular? I'm sure there's probably a whole catalog of programs that you can choose. Why these? Just out of curiosity. I mean, and what's the process? Is it your board, or is it who looks at these?
So when they come up with their list, it is the principals and their literacy coaches coming up with the wish list. So it's not me.
Yeah, you look at it, each individual school, be it these three schools or across the district. I mean, you include your middle schools and your high schools in the same conversation. There's a lot of piloting that happens with things. And so the principals are always conversing with each other to talk about what is working in our building, what's not working, so that a lot of idea exchange happens. And so if you look, for example, at the BMath, and the proposal here, you can see Fairview's implemented this in multiple grade levels. Summit, I think, has done it with just fourth grade at this time, I believe, and they want to expand that down to third. And so there's conversation happening between Mr. Gober and Mr. Abel about that success. And so those kinds of conversations happen off of pilots, then expands throughout those conversations. And our instructional coaches, like she said, does a really good job of looking for that resource out there that is vetted, that we know is not just some grab out of nowhere, that is research-based, that we can start implementing in our schools.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Great. Thank you for the very thorough report and follow-up from last year as well. And so I think then we go ahead at this time to move into discussion for screening, or was
I think that we can just move into the approval and voting process right now.
Yep.
Unless there are any more questions or we have any more.
Okay. All right, we have then a $50,000 proposal, and outlined as, they share the information with us. If there are no other specific questions, I think we can move to accept, this, proposal as presented unless someone has a suggestion for change. So do we have a motion?
Move to accept.
Paul, second? Second. All of those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Good stuff, yeah.
Thank you for supporting our students with CCSC. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your good work.
Good work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Our goal is to build children to take over the job.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
I'm like my first year, I was giving me that. It's like,
All right.
Thank you. All right, so since we had flipped the agenda, I think we'll go back to where we left off, and that is the director's report, D.
Yeah, so last week I presented to council, Kate was there. I don't know who else was watching online for a 5-year extension for the BUEZ. So we have another 5 years as a board to reign over the BUEZ, I guess. It was a pretty interesting council meeting. The motion carried 7-1. I encourage you to go watch that board meeting if you'd like to see the rest of those details. But in this 5-year extension, kind of thinking about what we want to do with the BUEA, where we're headed, and where we want to end up. I've been thinking a lot about trying to get together a strategic plan for a 3-year strategic plan. So basically 2024 and 2025 would be information gathering, primarily in 2024, and then 2025 would be taking that data, analyzing it, and putting together a strategic plan for the following 3 years. So that's kind of what I've been, I kind of had bouncing in my head, because I feel that we have a really good amount of money, and I think we do a lot of good, but having more direction would be very helpful to, I know, administrative staff. I think it would be helpful to the board. I just, if you have any thoughts on that, I would love to hear them. But I think that we have potential to do some really great things, especially with some of the money that we'll have coming in and going after some of these different sources of income in the future. So that's what I have for that. I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions about any of that.
The one dissenting vote against, was that just somebody nervous about tax money being spent in general?
No, actually, it wasn't. It was a vote on principle. Actually, they said that they were very happy with what the BUA has done and thought that we were a very successful board. However, they had, they were taking issue with something else and trying to apply it as though it were a similar situation. So, like I said, I encourage you to go look at the.
Because I had read something about
Roll
that.
pay. But regardless, you know what, we got it, and and we're gonna keep on doing the good work.
Overall, the reaction was.
Yeah, it was very positive. It was very, very positive.
Mostly a no vote for something else.
Yeah.
So.
But I think it's very funny that my first year, I think I probably presented to council more than anybody usually does. First year, I just like hit the right year where I've like had to like go do a lot of things. So I'm ready for next year.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to draw attention to the Wonderlab grant report that I put in the packet. Once again, they are very grateful to the grant that we gave them. As you can see, these are their deliverables to complete the contract with photos and the invoice and all of that. So that's just a piece of information for you to have, just so we know that the contract has been completed. So
Just to remind me, it came in the budget?
I'm sorry.
It came in on budget or under budget?
It came in at budget, so they were asking for a portion of what their actual spend was.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks like it came in at budget, I believe. I'd have to compare it to the older one, but yeah, they were only asking for a portion. We didn't cover the whole thing.
Okay.
All right, and that's all I have, unless anyone has any other questions or anything.
Great. Moving on, September financial reports, Cheryl.
Okay, yes, September. It's come and gone. That's what was it. So first we'll look at, the profit and loss, statement. So, $8,396.08 was brought in as income during September. This amount was, derived from $8,143.63 from banking interest, $9.11 in RRF loan interest, and $233.29 in, I'm sorry, that was late fees, the 9/11, and the $233.29 is in RRF loan interest. On the expense side, $14,806.42 was spent in September. These expenses came from Joan Hart grant category in the amount of $9,000. We had scholarships given out, business scholarships in the amount of $2,311.42. DEI training scholarships in the amount of $2,400. Resident scholarships in the amount of $1,095. Other income from CD interest was in the amount of $67.12. So your net income for the month of September, which is income minus expense, you have a negative $6,343.22. Now, if you flip over to your balance sheet, the total checking and savings balance on September 30th was $3,240,431.60. This comes from your four different banking units. First Financial has a balance of $2,476,627.18. German American has $216,966.31. IU Credit Union has $204,223.37. People's State Bank has $104,614.74. For other assets, which are long-term notes receivable, that amount was $200,570.22. So your combined total assets on September 30th came to $3,203,001.82. So we will now flip over to your profit and loss budget versus actual highlights for the period of January 1st through September 30th. $325,587.41 of income has been received since January, which is 55.8% of your $584,004 budget. So on the expense side, you'll see a credit amount of $781.02 is reflected under accounting and tax services. Under banking service fees, there's a credit of $24,040.41. Again, this is all because we had the banking interest go under banking expenses instead of under the income side. The SBDC grants budget has been fully expended in an amount of $45,000. The same for your lemonade day in the amount of $2,500. For zone arts grants, $26,800 of the $40,000 budget has been distributed. If you look under zone improvement grants, $12,222 of the $150,000 budget has been distributed. And this went to the Wonder Lab. And that was funded with a 50-50 split between business accessibility and business building improvement grants. So the total grants category, 21.5% has been distributed, which accounts for $86,522 of your $401,750 budget. We've had $3,033 for insurance and $39.99 of expense, miscellaneous expense that has been dispensed since as of September 30th. 14.5% of our budgeted scholarships has been distributed with $2,311.42 from business scholarships, $2,400 from DEI training scholarships, and $1,095 from resident scholarships. This leaves $34,193.58 available to cover additional scholarships that will be paid out in the upcoming months. 13.5% of total expense budget has been dispensed thus far, which amounts to $70,579.98. So through September 30th of this year, the net income of $257,533.75, which includes your interest from CDs in the amount of $2,526.32. Have any questions?
Small business develop, what's the CBDC stand for?
I don't know that I have that written down. Do you know what that stands for? That's a good question.
Oh, is it in the actual profit and loss or,
It's,
It's the 45,000, I just,
oh, the
Yeah.
SBDC?
no, the well, it says
BDC.
SBDC.
Yeah, so that's the Small Business Development Center.
That's right.
So Ivy Tech.
Yep, okay.
Any other questions on the September financial report? Not. Do we have a motion to approve? Chris, second,
Second.
Paul, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Great. All right. Back to my agenda. I try to save trees, I make two-sided copies and then but, oh my gosh, one of my favorite topics, budgets. All right.
Does anyone need an updated copy or are we all good? I did send one out at I think at 10 this morning, so. After conferring with Cheryl about some things, so I think we've got some more accurate numbers. So going through this, I guess we have, plenty of time. So going through this, I know that there have been some discrepancies and we've kind of talked about budget, putting budget together last year versus putting budget together this year. And one of the biggest things was the ESID income. Last year, I thought I had overestimated. There was a clerical error that actually made me think that we were going to get $500,000, which was no fault of my own. I feel much more confident in my math. I wasn't doing this wrong. So after having several meetings with Catalent and really trying to figure out what the issues have been with their ESID specifically, what we're projecting right now is $429,000, around $429,000 is income next year. Additionally, with the money market account, we'll also have an additional $84,000 in interest. So we have a substantial amount of money that will be coming into the BUEA for next year. Should all go to plan and everyone decides to pay their participation fees, because that is one thing that you don't have to take a tax deduction, which means that you don't have to pay fees into this. We did have a company that did not get the deduction. They didn't pay their fees, and that was upwards of $100,000 that we didn't get this year. So it's really as to whether the business makes the choice to do it. So as we're looking at this, I think some of the major differences were the banking service charges that Cheryl went through with me. That actually should be a 0. I think okay, here's the.
I don't know that I'm looking at the right one. I'm just a little, there's 2 up, so, okay.
Let me just grab you one.
All right. I try not to do the paper thing, but I'll do it.
No, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's already printed. I did it, so. So with the banking service charges, that'll actually be 0. I think that you guys have a proper copy, and I think I'm the one that has a mistake copy, so. So all of that is pretty standard and a carryover from last year and the year prior. The only thing that I really need some help on is some historical information about some of these budget lines. For instance, like project administration, in 2022, there was $12,210 spent. I wasn't sure as to exactly what that was last year, so I just kept that amount and carried it over. But we didn't spend it this year in project administration, so I'm not sure what exactly that spend was. So if anyone has any information on what that project was in 2021. I'd like to know, because if I don't need that $12,000 in that line, I won't use it.
I can look back and see if there's anything in the file.
Great,
Anyone on what that was spent on.
great. Oh,
Dee,
go
can
ahead.
I ask you a quick question? Just
Sure.
comparing, income projected for next year,
Mhm.
what is the RDC participation fee? So we have $27,500 received this year, so I'm not seeing that.
Let me
What is that?
I think the label is different on,
Okay,
there's a difference in label, because that should be the AIEZ
okay,
participation
okay,
fee.
okay, got it. So
It shouldn't be RDC.
Okay, got it. So the.
So we have to pay back the AIEZ from all of the EZIDs. Because when we send out the invoice, it is BUEA fees and AIEZ fees. They all come to us,
Okay,
and then we pay them back for those fees.
okay, and then some though, it seems are refunded. Is that with this? Because it's an income, am I understanding that?
Yeah, so it's an income and then it ends up being refunded. So,
Okay.
yeah, so then it is.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay.
For sure. So other than that, are there questions on the first page? Because it is pretty straightforward. Okay. Feel free to rope me back in if you think of something. Next page is the grant making budget. And these are our traditional standard grants that the BUA has been doing for a very long time. School grants, as we went through with MCCSC, it is, as Sorella said, we did double their grants last year. For 2023, I made a line for $50,000. I am open to adding more money to that line if the board sees fit. Otherwise, I was just going to carry it over for another $50,000 this year. Resident scholarships, we've actually been doing very well, and this number isn't reflected on the balance sheet that you have currently. We just closed some of these scholarships within the past few weeks. So there is actually more money that we've taken out of this line. So I've left it at $15,000. It seems to be covering us annually pretty well until I have more asks. I don't see adding any to that budget line. Business scholarship program, I'm keeping it at $10,000. I hesitate to lower that by any means. I think that there's been some fluctuations annually on the business scholarship program, and I think that $10,000 is an excellent number to keep it at. SBDC Cook Center is our annual commitment to IB Tech, SBDC, and the Cook Center. That's several different entrepreneurship and technical programs. And I think that 45,000 has been our standard. If the board feels that we should raise that line, I'm open to that. The Dimension Mills Zone Day Pass program. So this is a curious line because it's not really being taken advantage of as I would like for it to be. I worked with the mill to, well, first of all, $1,000 only covers 50-day passes for the entire year because they've raised their rates for their day passes over time. I think a while back it used to cover more. I did work with the mill this year to have something that was completely online. And I think that maybe giving it one more year to see if the online program would be easier because you can just literally click make your reservation, and it's very, very simple to get this day pass. I think that giving it another year to see if we can make this a more viable program. I think it's a good program. I wish more people would take advantage of it. I'm going to do my best to kind of get it out there a little bit more. But we've made it incredibly easy at this point. I'd like to see what happens with this program, but with 50 passes, that's not really a whole lot of passes. And so, you know, it can go either way. We can just try the 50 passes this year and just see if we get rid of them all. And then if we'd like to add more money to it, I'm sure it's a discussion that we can have with the board.
So the $1,000 though, you're saying it has been used this year?
It has not been used this year.
Okay, I think your, column, you need to. you need
Oh,
to-
I'm so
You
sorry.
need to zero that out.
Did
in
not
your-
catch
var-
that one.
your
My
variance
bad.
Is that the
should
same for
be-
22 then, that it's never been used, right?
2022, it was never used, and I will tell you for 2022, I can see between still coming out of COVID and the kind of difficulty of the system that was in place before
Oh,
of
yeah.
like having to like schedule and get the pass, and it was confusing for the people coming in. It's good when the mill knows what they're in for the day. You know, if somebody's making that reservation, they can be prepared to like give them the tour, especially if they've never been there before, kind of like giving them the ground rules and stuff. So, yeah.
I'm happy to do really whatever you suggest here. I just wonder if there is something we could do with the mill that if people aren't taking advantage of this, and like, if we could take that 1,000 and do something like BUEA mill days or something that are like more advertised.
Okay.
And then, I mean, it's just an idea, but I'm happy to
that's
do
not an
like
idea.
what you're doing, like where they provide lunch, or like we provide lunch and then you do tours and can like stay and work, or I don't know if there's something
But some type of promotional thing.
that
too,
we
kind of
could do to like be like, everyone can come in together, don't be scared. I don't think it's because
Yeah.
people are scared, but you know, like, try something new with other people, try
Sure.
something new. I don't know, but I am happy to just continue
Sure.
on if that is
Yeah.
preferred.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I do think that there needs to be more efforts to, I mean, just in general for the BUA to have more involvement in the trades district. I think it's really important as it becomes this huge developing sector within our zone. It's really important for us to have a stake in the game there. So doing things that are not only, you know, big picture, but also connecting with residents and getting them involved as well, because you know, I think that there is, it could very easily silo itself. You know, tech and development can silo itself. So really making that outreach to residents to being like, this is a place where you can come to. Like, you don't have to be a programmer or or anything like that. You don't have to be that type of
Right.
person to come here.
Right.
All sorts of people work here. All sorts of people spend time here. So.
I think that does get lost, right? Where I think the COCs started potentially at the mill,
Mhm.
you know, and they're like beekeepers that started kind of at the mill, right? And I think it gets lost now in like the tech conversations that you can do really anything, and just if you need like minimal office space.
Well, and you know, it's the idea of innovation, not just being tech.
Yeah.
Colin and I were just
Yeah.
having a conversation
Yeah.
about this, that
Yeah.
innovation needs to be holistic.
Yeah.
And we're talking about all industries, we're talking about all sectors. Innovation needs to be holistic, and the trades district can be something like that, but we have to make a concerted effort to do that, so it doesn't get siloed.
Who promotes it now? Is it just the mail, or do we promote it, or just on the website, or how do people find out?
So right now, the trades district does, I guess they're doing their own promotion at this point in time. They have reached out to us for some support on some things.
John?
Yes.
It's okay,
Yeah, so they've reached out for support on, you know, kind of getting the word out and being more involved. So I think that's something that we should definitely look into. But I don't want to, I don't want to get down in any rabbit holes, because we do only have so much time to get through the rest of this. DEI scholarships, I did drop that by $5,000. Unfortunately, we did not have, that's not true. We had many people reach out, but the definition of what the scholarship was unclear. So it wasn't, so instead of businesses coming to fund a program that they would like to participate in, they were looking for money to fund a program that they wanted to put on. I think that's great. I mean, I think it's awesome that there are businesses that are you know, specializing in these things. I think that it's a good direction to step into, and maybe reshaping what the DEI scholarship is, or maybe either broadening the scope or creating a separate one for businesses who actually are doing the work to create these programs for other businesses, is something to consider. But as for right now, our standard DEI scholarship for participation, I've left at, or I've lowered to $10,000.
And next year, if we want, we can change it. Is that right? If we want to change the description of,
We can.
or would it be like, we need to do that this year for next year or?
I'm not sure. I mean, I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to. As long as we're broadening it and not narrowing the scope. Okay, I don't see that it
Well,
makes.
it's not statutorily based, so kind of whether you guys decide to do it.
Okay.
But yeah, I would just say your biggest thing is gonna be making sure that people have notice ahead of time.
Sure. Okay, great.
Who is using that $3,500? It seems like it was the same the year before, so.
That was, no, it actually wasn't the same group the year before. It just happened to be the same amount.
Okay,
Um,
so that's not a reoccurring.
no, this
Oh, okay.
was Lotus. It was Lotus and Girls Inc., I believe, this year, but I can't remember who it was last year.
Okay.
But, yeah, because there's kind of like a standard amount for it, so
Yeah, 2 participants and.
yeah, absolutely. City arts and culture, as we've been talking about the Trades District, I propose adding an additional $20,000 to the city art program, as there has been a lengthy process in getting the art placed in the Trades District. There have been some budgetary problems as far as like the actual cost of putting it in, the cost of materials and things like that. And Holly reached out to see if maybe we could use this money. Now, the reason it's $20,000 is because it would technically be 2023 money. It's just that we don't have the bandwidth to do the contracts and everything this year. We would want to take that money and hold it over for next year when we do have the bandwidth to do the contract. So it would basically be using the 2023 money that didn't get used this year. At least that's kind of how we're thinking about it. If we had the bandwidth, we would 100% be proposing something to you next month, but we just don't. So that's the increase in the city art budget. Everything else, I've kept the same. Holly does an amazing job of being able to utilize all of these funds and help many, many people. I think my only recommendation would be to potentially up her budget by $10,000. As her funds were completely exhausted and she still had more people asking. I think that Holly does an excellent job every year. So.
I agree with that. I think that's one of the areas that we seem to spend all of the money in are the zone art grants. And we have a lot of artists working in the zone and so forth. I would suggest taking $10,000 from the historic facade grant, seeing that none of it is the $50,000 is a hefty budget and none of it was spent this year. And it looks like $22,000 was spent from a 40,000 budget last year. So I might recommend not changing our subtotal for that, but maybe moving $10,000 into zone arts grants and reducing the historic facade. Is my understanding going through the historic commission. Is that
Historic preservation.
Thank you. Is pretty tricky. So I don't know if $50,000 is, you know.
Yeah, and it's not that there weren't applicants for the grant, there were. But it is a difficult process getting through. I think that there's some language that Gloria and I can work on for the historic facade grant. I think the idea of possibly broadening that to homeowners as well, instead of just businesses and 501c3s, because if you live in a historic district, it's really difficult to afford some of those improvements or repairs and things. So there definitely needs to be a reimagining of that grant to make it effective and make it accessible to people.
Is there anything we can do about, I know it's the historic preservation who sets the standards, but is there anything we can do to make it more lenient?
You know what, I don't know, but I can ask Gloria,
That's other aspect.
Oh, no, I don't know, exactly like how those are set, like, and how, what the standard is and how that's decided, but it's like, you don't know if you don't ask, so.
So I staff HBC.
Oh, nice.
So it's a mix of local, historic preserve, like the neighborhoods,
Mhm.
as well as statutorily based. So it's, some of it is incredibly strict because it comes from the state.
Gotcha.
As opposed to local ordinances. So some of it
Right.
is a little bit, but then the neighborhoods also set their own guidelines as well.
Gotcha.
So that's where you're kind of running into a lot of conflicting kind of hierarchies.
Sure.
So some of it can probably be made more lenient, but we also have to watch out for statutory requirements.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it sounds like something that could potentially be explored for as part of your strategic plan. Just-
Yeah.
Yeah. And Gloria.
Are there increments, like maximum, of the 50 or 40,000, like, is it like a maximum of 10, or could one person come in and say, I'd like to ask for the 50 or 40, whatever we decided?
It's a max of 10.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's a max of 10. And I think that another thing with the wording of the grant that I think that there's a misconception that you have to ask for 10 grand. It's like, you don't. If you have $1,000 and you need $2,000, you can come and present your thing and get a match. It's a matching grant. So like I said, there's some reworking that needs to just happen there, because that grant is, I think it's very useful. But it's not necessarily as accessible as it can be. But I do think that, yeah, lowering it, at least for this year.
I think so.
Mhm.
I don't see a lot. I mean, for people to invest right now in the economic climate that we're in, I don't see it happen that much. So
Yeah.
it would not be great to have it just earmarked for that and not get used.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I can say the arts could definitely use it. We just finished our last cycle of reviews for arts grants this year. So we had 90 applications. So the need is there, and we've been citing the statistic a lot. For every dollar you see invested in the arts in the community, there is a $9 rate of return. So we will see payback on this.
That's a hefty leverage, so yeah, it's pretty amazing.
For the arts grants, does a maker, is that included in that?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
It's like very broad.
Yeah, we try
great.
to be very, I'm not gonna say open-minded, we're just like a creative expression comes in many forms, and we try to honor that when we're making decisions about this.
Moving on to page 3, our final page. So at the top, we have the implemented zone improvement grants. As a reminder, these were implemented in Q3 of this year, so the second half of the year. I actually raised all of these by $5,000 because this means 1 to 2 more people that would be able to get this grant. I think that if we had implemented it at Q1 of 2023, we would have gotten 2 to 3 times this spend. They were successful the moment we opened them up. I think they will be successful in the coming year, and I think they're much needed at this point. So overall, I raised the budget on that by $15,000, and it ends up being a line item total of $75,000 for the small business safety, security, business improvement, and business accessibility modification. Moving on, prospective zone improvement grants. These are grants that I would really like to get off the ground. I was very, very hopeful last year, starting out thinking that I would have time to put out 8 different grants. That is not how my time works. But I do think that they're still important. I think that any 5 of these, home improvement, home accessibility modification, resident child care grant, environmental sustainability, which is very vague, I know, and tech modernization and software. I think any of those categories would be an excellent spend on zone residents and zone businesses. These are primarily resident focused. We don't have a whole lot just for residents. There is a tax deduction that residents can get. Unfortunately, that is not as easy to actually get from the state.
Even if you live and work in the zone,
If you live and work in the
you have
zone,
to do both those things, which is not
not
really
not
normal.
necessarily the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're not. Unless your office is like within like, 5 blocks of your home, like it's
Yeah.
like not really happening. So
I have that, but it.
yeah, like a year. But I think that we need more outreach directly to residents, and I think that helping residents with some of these things is really important. So I would leave it to the board as to. I would like to try and implement 2 more grants. Any of these I think are great items. If the board feels strongly about any 2 of these, I will take them and I will run with them and I will get something put together. The other thing is the potential of, expanding the implemented grants to include homeowners and whatnot. We could also do that as well. So I've left all of those line items as 0. We'll figure that out once we decide which 2 we want to do. And we can discuss those numbers. One-time rapid response grant making. This is something that I'll eliminate this once I put out the final draft of the budget. These are things left over from COVID. So total income would be $538,569.53. Total expenditures are looking around $454,000 with a net income of $84,569.53 for the year. That number increased a lot once we talked about the bank interest income. So I don't know how the board feels with that income for the year. I think that is a pretty solid number, considering what the incomes that we've had in the past.
But this does not include any of these prospective zones.
It does not include any of the prospective zoning. So potentially it would be, if we're going with the numbers from last year,
Then we're gonna be $10,000 in the red if we go with those same numbers. If we use 95,000,
oh, no, we would only pick 2 of those grants.
so we're looking, okay,
So it would be more like 30
to
to
okay. So
45,000.
we're probably looking at about 50
Yeah.
net income next year. So how do you want us to select the perspective or give you feedback on the perspective zone improvement grants?
Well, if anyone feels strongly about anything right now, I'd love to hear it.
So we're just gonna like read these words and say, I have interest in that. Is that, I'm sorry, but is that sort of where we are? Like, I have interest in childcare grants. Right?
Yeah.
And we would like build some, we would all like build something
Build
out.
something out from that.
Okay.
But I think that these are, I do have some like rough drafts of some of these, if you guys would like for me to send that out. I may have sent it last year, but they were extremely rough.
Mhm.
But I can give you kind of like some frameworks of like what we were working on for some of these grants. Once again, I would love to have approval for the budget by December. I think everybody would be real happy getting this done by December. But we can also amend the budget once we decide on the grants and once they're all fleshed out, we can amend the budget later on. So
I would say I'm interested in the middle 3. So accessibility, childcare, and
environmental
yeah.
sustainability.
I'm wondering too, if home improvement and home accessibility could potentially be combined into one, even because I feel like there's like resident home improvement that can be like with a mind towards sustainability, right? But then there's also business environmental sustainability.
Sure. But yeah, why don't we can all chew on that, and if you guys want to just kind of email me your thoughts on what you think would be best. Like I said, once again, we can amend the budget later. This is not super pressing. But
I think if you have some information about the guidelines or what the framework of the
Sure.
guidelines were.
Yeah, because
for these.
like 3 of you weren't here, but I said that last time, so yeah, I can definitely do that.
And then also, I know there was just a matter of time and resources for getting these off the ground. I think also just understanding what you think could be the most successful of these as well with your time and all of that. I mean, we could all select one of these, but if it's not, something that really fits within,
Sure.
what you think you can, reasonably achieve for, getting out to the community for responses and applications and so forth. But I would be in favor of reviewing some of the information about it. And then, since this is a draft budget, looking at, maybe a target of $30,000 to $40,000 for that, those grants when it comes back for a final. So that, we have some idea of what then we're going to be looking at, $45,000 to $55,000 net income with that adjustment.
Yeah, I believe one of our meetings, we discussed having, to not how I'm sorry, my mind went blank, to not pile these, grant, representation to the community on you and discuss having an advocate that did just that. Getting out in the community to communicate all the grants and, what I mean, all the resources that the BUA has. And doing so, we would get more responses or more active application towards these grants. Is that still the option?
That is still something that we could potentially get together. Once again, bandwidth issue. So, but I do have a pretty awesome intern this year, so maybe I can. Okay. So help me out with that.
These are dollars that are spent in the zone only, correct?
So they are, so sort of like MCCSC, yes, we would like for them to be spent within the zone. However, there are some things like MCCSC where it is benefiting residents of the zone.
Gotcha.
So I would like to make sure that we are keeping that in mind as well, that, some of the things that actually benefit the residents of the zone may not be in the zone proper, or may just be or may be adjacent to the zone.
Gotcha.
Now, there's a whole other conversation about our bylaws.
Yeah.
Which we do have to have in the coming year. And we need to talk about that. We will have that happen, so.
Thanks everyone. So, quickly, December meeting, I think we need to try to move it. There's some challenges with schedules.
We do have some challenges with schedules, and Cheryl, we get any
Oh, I'm so sorry. So let's have this discussion over email.
Yeah, I will do a doodle poll and see what's going on.
Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Thank
you.
Yeah.